May 1940. The British Army is trapped on a beach in France. German forces are closing in. The Royal Navy doesn't have enough ships, and the world is bracing for a catastrophic defeat. But then, a strange flotilla appears on the horizon. Fishing boats, pleasure yachts, river ferries, an improvised rescue mission that will go down in history as the miracle of Dunkirk. You're watching War Stories, where we tell the real stories of war, courage, and survival. Today's episode: how Britain turned a disaster into a symbol of resilience, and how ordinary people in ordinary boats helped save an entire army. In May 1940, Nazi Germany unleashed a shocking new style of warfare on Western Europe. They called it Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. It combined fast-moving tanks, motorized infantry, and overwhelming air power to smash through defensive lines. The French and British had prepared for a repeat of World War I, expecting heavy fighting along the established front lines, but they were wrong. German forces simply bypassed many of the strongest fortifications by driving through the Ardennes forest, a region Allied commanders had dismissed as too difficult for tanks. Within days, the German military had broken through. The British Expeditionary Force and their French allies found themselves pushed back again and again, retreating toward the northern coast of France. Communications collapsed. The roads were clogged with panicked refugees and retreating soldiers. By the end of May, around 400,000 Allied troops were cornered near the port town of Dunkirk. Behind them was the English Channel. In front of them, rapidly approaching German armored divisions. For the British government, this was a nightmare scenario. If the entire British Expeditionary Force, its best-trained soldiers, and most of its modern equipment was destroyed or captured, the United Kingdom would be left virtually defenseless. An invasion of Britain itself would almost certainly follow. The new Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, understood the stakes perfectly. The Royal Navy could send large warships and transport vessels, but the port of Dunkirk was under constant air attack by the German Luftwaffe. Most of the harbor facilities were already destroyed by bombing, and the water was too shallow for big ships to get close to the beaches where the men were gathered. Out of this desperation, a bold and almost unbelievable idea was born. What if they used small civilian boats to act as shuttles? They could ferry soldiers from the shallow beaches out to the larger naval ships waiting in deeper water. Fishing boats, pleasure cruisers, private yachts, even river ferries, anything that could float and make the dangerous crossing of the English Channel was considered. This plan was codenamed Operation Dynamo, named after the dynamo room in the tunnels under Dover Castle where the operation was being coordinated. The operation began on May 26, 1940. British authorities started requisitioning hundreds of small boats from harbors all along the southern coast of England. Some were crewed by Royal Navy personnel, but many others were sailed by their civilian owners. Fishermen, lifeboat crews, and weekend sailors volunteered to risk everything. They were ordinary people who answered an extraordinary call, sailing their personal boats into a war zone. The journey was incredibly dangerous. German aircraft patrolled the skies, strafing and bombing the flotilla. The waters were littered with naval mines and the wreckage of sunken ships. Yet day after day, these little ships of Dunkirk made the perilous crossing. On the beaches, the scene was one of organized chaos. Soldiers waited in long, orderly lines that stretched from the sand right into the sea, some standing in water up to their chests for hours. They were constantly exposed to German air attacks. The sky was filled with black smoke from burning oil tanks and destroyed vehicles. The little boats would come as close to the shore as they could, often running aground in the shallow water. Soldiers waded out, were helped aboard, and then transferred to the larger naval destroyers and transports waiting further out at sea, which would then carry them back to England. At the start of the operation, British military leaders were hoping, at best, to rescue about 45,000 men over a couple of days before the German army closed in completely. But the evacuation just kept going, growing in scale as more and more boats arrived from England. High above, the Royal Air Force fought furious battles with the German Luftwaffe to protect the ships and the beaches. Many soldiers on the ground complained they never saw British planes and felt abandoned. In reality, the RAF's fighter pilots were often engaging the enemy further inland and over the sea, trying to intercept the bombers before they could even reach Dunkirk. This strategy saved countless lives, even if it wasn't visible from the ground. The Germans made mistakes too. After their incredibly rapid advance, their armored divisions were ordered to halt just outside Dunkirk. This controversial halt order gave the Allies critical extra time, a few precious days, to organize the evacuation and strengthen their defensive perimeter around the beaches. For 9 days, under relentless bombardment and air attack, the evacuation continued day and night. Ships were sunk, boats were destroyed, and thousands of men were killed or captured. But the number of soldiers getting away kept rising, far beyond anyone's wildest expectations. By the time Operation Dynamo officially ended on June 4th, an astonishing 338,000 Allied soldiers had been rescued. That was more than 7 times the initial estimate. About 198,000 were British, and the other 140,000 were French, Belgian, and other Allied troops who would live to fight another day. From a purely military perspective, Dunkirk was a terrible defeat. Almost all of the army's heavy weapons, tanks, trucks, and valuable supplies had to be abandoned on the beaches of France. The German army would soon occupy Paris, and the Battle of France was lost. On paper, Hitler had won a massive victory. But psychologically and politically, Dunkirk became something else entirely. In a famous speech to Parliament, Churchill was careful to manage expectations. He said, "We must be very careful not to assign to this deliverance the attributes of a victory. Wars are not won by evacuations." But he also praised what he called the miracle of deliverance. The British people seized on the story of the little ships, the narrow escape, the idea that raw courage and improvisation could snatch life from the jaws of certain disaster. This became what later generations called the Dunkirk spirit, the belief that even in the darkest of times, collective effort and stubborn determination could see the nation through. The rescued soldiers would form the core of the new British Army. They would go on to fight in North Africa, in Italy, and would eventually return to France on D-Day in 1944. Without them, Britain's ability to continue the war would have been shattered. Many of the original little ships of Dunkirk still exist today. They are carefully preserved by their owners and sailed in commemorative events, serving as floating symbols of both national memory and incredible individual bravery. The story has, of course, been romanticized over the years, but it's rooted in very real risk and sacrifice. Civilian volunteers faced bombs, mines, and stormy seas. Some of them never returned. Their selfless actions blurred the line between soldier and civilian, showing that in a total war, entire societies must become involved. Dunkirk is also a powerful reminder of an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes survival itself is the victory. The British Army did not win at Dunkirk. It escaped, but that escape made every future victory possible. The miracle of Dunkirk wasn't magic. It was the result of desperate planning, immense sacrifice, and thousands of ordinary people doing something truly extraordinary. If you want more real war stories from around the world, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. And let me know in the comments, if you had a boat in 1940, would you have volunteered to sail it across the channel into the chaos of Dunkirk? Thanks for watching.